utilizing the free lunch that DPS or school districts are giving out, using that as an opportunity to get information into the hands of parents and activities into the hands of kids. Direct line. Thought that was brilliant. The other was the passport, just making sure that kids have environmental passport where that has activities in them and they have to check off what they're doing in the environment, whether that's a walk, finding a rock, you know, a wildflower, whatever that is. I thought that was just a brilliant idea. So those are the two things that came up that were ahas for me. Lisa, what did you think?
Yep, I would state those as well. So thanks, Deborah, for sharing for our group.
Awesome. Well, thank you. How about Leslie, for group 3, EE at home, what highlights or ahas would you share?
Katie, I wanted to say that our group was really wonderful to work with today. Thank you for all of your wonderful ideas. And one of the things that they highlighted was that there's a lot of new space to be advocating for connecting with the natural world, but it's taking place in a virtual environment, which seems kind of counterintuitive. But there's been these general shifts in priorities within the home, and one opportunity that we have as environmental educators is to promote nature as a safe space, especially with how COVID transmission works. So there's a potential opportunity there. One thing our group did acknowledge was that there's resources to engage with environmental education at the home that can really vary across their communities. And so while we were having our community and school discussions, one thing that really resonated was that at home, there could be varied resources to engage in this work. So there was an emphasis on just making sure that we create a diverse array of resources for people to engage in activities in different ways and at different levels, with different time commitments too, because they might have just different restrictions and limitations within the home to do so.
Great, thanks so much, group 3. How about group 4?
Yeah, so similarly actually to how you just wrapped up, I think some of the big things that we talked about were related to access and how things are so different now, both in relation to nature and to the internet is the other big one, of course. And so some of the challenges associated with more people having, or well, more people are going outside at first with COVID, so that was great, but then some of the challenges with that because of how COVID is transmitted, but then also access to just like what students have at home or wherever they are. And so because each student has such a different situation, kind of the challenges around creating content or curriculum or activities based on a whole array of access, whether it's knowledge, whether it's access to outdoor spaces, access to a printer. And so the idea of building scientists versus teaching facts and kind of relying on some of those basic EE skills of like how to think instead of what to think, because we really don't know and can't control what our students have access to.
Great, thanks. How about group 5? What's one aha from your group?
I think one of them was the opportunities. Well, I was going to talk about inequities, but that was just discussed. So partnering opportunities and opportunities to rethink and redesign programs. I'm not sure, I mean, that could relate to being at home, but another aspect of that is also, someone brought up multi-generational learning. So the opportunity to use the elderly in our community and who would love a chance to be working with kids outside. So
great. Let's shift to EE in the community. How about group 6? What was one aha that you can share?
So I'd say our biggest aha was that it's a mixed bag of what's going on, because there's actually a lot more people using the outdoors in a lot of places, but there's not educators there or people there to help educate them on safety or help them or do any kind of environmental education. So in some ways people are getting more access, but less quality access maybe as far as education goes. And there was also the point brought up that that could also create for people that already have less equitable access, that are stuck in urban centers and can't really get out to more natural areas or have little biodiversity in their neighborhood, it can make it worse with centers closed or with events not happening. So in some ways, it helps certain people. Virtual events too can also be better for some, more accessible, and then less accessible for a lot of people.
Awesome. How about group 7?
Safe as Maine, if not safe. And we look at a number of different.
I'll share a couple thoughts, and I would love to have Chris share some thoughts as well, since we tag team on it. But for me, there was a couple aha moments that really stuck out, including that in our community, there's this increased use of the phrase "stay safe," increased focus on safety and staying safe. But there's no change in how we address and how we identify risks and how do we address them and mitigate them. And so that's not only with the COVID virus, but then how is it that we address and mitigate, help people address and mitigate risks out in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, we talk a lot about how there's this huge desire on the sort of the community writ large of returning to normal. We just want to return to normal after the pandemic. But as a group, we really felt like we were in this amazing opportunity to address a paradigm shift where, this is a great opportunity to shift how we see the world, what our normal is, and create a normal that we want.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Chris, what do you want to add?
I'd follow up with what Kelly said, safety and the paradigm shift. How do we actually get out in the world? And another thing that we brought up with community is both in our cities and our rural communities, there are people without internet access or good internet access. So that's creating a problem and a challenge for a lot of communities to, address this equity issue. So that's one of the things that I wanted to add. And the third thing I wanted to add is our group was a great group. I wanted to thank everybody for being involved in it. And we just did what this forum was supposed to do. We all collaborated together. There was a lot of sharing with, hey, you have this idea, I have this idea, let's talk online afterwards. So I think that this forum really helped create that space for us.
Great, thank you. And how about group 8? Can you share one aha from your group?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kimberly. We talked a lot about the idea of redefining what it means to be in nature. And so backyards, schoolyards, urban gardens, and kind of reclaiming those spaces as nature, as natural spaces. And, down to the level of reclaiming things that are termed weeds and native plants that are not appreciated. Home gardening has that first interaction with nature. And also under that, guys, broadening what environmental education is. So, and we thought a great way to kind of deal with lack of internet access is to start centering community knowledge. What does your family know? What are the stories your family told about daisies? Who knows what this flower is called and how come that's an important thing to them? What are the interactions your family has had with nature? So that there's knowledge in that and that we can celebrate that. We don't have to stick with this hierarchical, I'm going to tell you what you need to know because that's what science is, kind of feeling around environmental education. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask you to share just one thing from your group so we make sure we get through all of the groups. How about group 9?
Sure. We had an interesting focus on the economic side of things, and given the economic stress caused by COVID, how there might be opportunities to think more entrepreneurially in the natural resource field and create opportunities, especially for high schoolers and young adults, where there might be more apprenticeships or mentorships for people who want to potentially engage in this work professionally and creating pathways for that.
Great, thank you. How about group 10?
Hi, yeah. My name is Olivia. I facilitated group 10. It was so lovely to work with everyone. There was a lot of crossover between EE at home and the community and school. But one of the things we were talking about was this lack of accessibility to technology that COVID has really brought to light. And so how do you get kids potentially outdoors in a way that maybe doesn't require technology? So maybe going back to having like these like signage, and then that allows something that maybe an instructor would do with one group of people. It could then allow a more permanent instruction, a more permanent education that can reach the community at large, or whoever happens to be in that space.
Great, thank you. Switching to EE at school, how about Laura from Group 11?
Group 11, thank you so much, all the ladies who participated. You had some great ideas. One thing I'd like to bring up is a conversation that we had as a leader, like a mind shift. Sometimes leadership doesn't really value outdoor education. So how do we get these principals and assistant principals on board to really value the outdoor education? We talked a lot about how EE leaders can host those virtual field trips, show that it can tie into NGSS and really assist with our educational outcomes.
Awesome, thank you. How about Group 12?
So in Group 12, we talked about how if ever there was a moment to promote outdoor education, this is it. And the pandemic did provide opportunities for new partnerships and collaborations that were created because it was necessary and because everybody was a little bit desperate. But that meant that this coming fall, that there's a great opportunity for collaboration and co-teaching opportunities between traditional classroom teachers and outdoor environmental educators. And we should take advantage of that.
Awesome, thank you. How about Group 13?
Oh, hi. We had a lot of things, and some of them have been mentioned. But I think one of the big things that we touched on was cost, and how there's going to be a big issue of cost going on, and not being able to support teachers with a lot of new materials on this new way of dealing with being in the classroom and at home. And so we really talked about, environmental educators providing things like videos, teachers that we've worked with in the past, also providing them with outdoor learning education opportunities for at home or in the class, or, using the school spaces, something as simple as a rock, that all the kids can relate to in whichever way that they do. And something really important, kind of a different topic, but I think it's important to think about, is helping families play a big role in all this, and that families have the ability to be a part of this more than they may think, and so kind of bringing them into the big picture too.
Great, thank you so much. And I apologize, this is also beautiful. I'm going to ask you to go just a little bit quicker so we make sure that everybody gets to report out. How about Group 14?
Yeah, I think one of the great points was just talking about looking at our work differently and seeing how we can push to really embrace equity through making statements, creating equity learning opportunities, even if we haven't traditionally thought that's our place, as well as breaking down barriers to give basic needs, whether it's connecting people we work with to programs, creating trauma-informed education, and other ways that we just questioning what we do to really think about what a bigger role we can play in pushing the system to think about equity.
Thank you. How about Group 15?
Hi there. The big thing that we kind of talked about is how interconnected school is to community and at-home education, and how it's not all that separate from each other. How in the school we have the community, and you have with that community what's taught at home, and how now there'll be more opportunity for teachers to use science and outdoor education.
Great, thank you. How about Group 16?
Awesome, thank you. So we talked about a lot of things that the other groups shared, but one thing that we talked about that I didn't hear anyone share is the fact that going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as Parker referenced in their presentation, there's just going to be a lot of talk around how first, are kids going to get access to transportation? Because in a lot of the more urban and metro areas, transportation, public transport is a way to get to school, the way to get to school. And in access to that is going to be the first basis to even starting the conversation around education overall.
Awesome. Thank you so much. How about group 17?
Yeah, so our group looked a lot at how both the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change both heavily expose the racial and social equalities in our current society, and how there needs to be better representation in teachers, because students have such an important relationship with their teachers, and it's really important that educators bring their experience and their history into spaces for students.
Absolutely. Thank you. And how about group 18?
Thanks. Last but not least. We something that we talked about that hasn't really been talked about yet from other groups is this big discussion about how science is taught, and then also indigenous ways of knowing and how those clash and also combine. Starting with an idea that one of our group members had about how indigenous families have gotten to teach their children during COVID their cultural ways instead of assimilated ways of public schools. And then we had a discussion just more along those lines about how that looked in schools, and especially with science.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. These are such powerful ahas. I wish we had so much more time to dig into them. 2.5 hours go so fast. Thank you for sharing out from each of your groups, and thank you to everyone for all of the insight and valuable thought that you put into today. There's obviously a lot more to dig into, so I'm going to pass it back to Eileen to talk about what our next steps are and how we'll share out this information.
Thanks so much, Katie. And I want to acknowledge that even though we're running out of time today, we're actually have another opportunity to come back together again in 2 weeks on Wednesday, July 22nd. So what we will be doing over the next couple of weeks is our states are actually going to be digging into the information that you shared out on your Jamboards. So in some ways, our work is now actually just beginning from the dialogues and conversations that you all were just in. We will, very quickly in the next few days, we will be sharing out the recording of the video from the beginning of our time together today, as well as PDFs of all of the Jamboards from all the groups to provide that transparency so that everybody can see the conversations that were happening across the groups. What we will be doing in the meantime is actually pulling themes and digging into the 18 different groups to kind of figure out what are the recommendations that we see really emerging from the whole group. And that's really our work now as the planning team, is to dig into that. And we will be sharing the results out again on July 22nd. So we definitely invite you back to continue the conversation then. And then we'll figure out where the conversation will go from there moving forward as well. Before we wrap up, a couple of quick things. One is I do want to offer gratitude to all of you for participating today. I want to recognize it's really, in some ways, it's really challenging for us to connect virtually. And in other ways, it's also a real gift to be able to connect right now with people literally all over the country. And so when I think back to April, when we were all thinking about, well, what if we did this kind of tri-state virtual summit, and how would it look, and how do we bring people together? I don't even think back then we envisioned how powerful it would be to actually not just have people from our 3 states, but people representing all different areas of this country coming together. So I really just want to offer appreciation to everyone today who participated and engaged in this convening in this event. I also want to offer my heartfelt thanks to all of our facilitators who really stepped up into really valuable roles as leaders today. So I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible Maine change makers, incredible staff members from Colorado, as well as members of the Building the Foundation for Equity Learning community from Colorado. And all of you in New Mexico, I hope you already know just how deep of appreciation I have for all of our Exploring Equitable Education Outdoors fellows. and just having that incredible opportunity to work with you in so many different ways. So thank you all very much. And before I pass it off to Amara, I just want to check in with my colleagues, Katie, Olivia, and Megan, just to see if we missed anything before we have Amara close us out today. All right, Amara from Maine, I would love to pass it off to you to close our time together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eileen. And thank you everyone for joining us today. To close, I wanted to read a poem, Human Family by Maya Angelou. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy. Some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse, delight, brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, but I've never seen any two who really were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while laying side by side. We love and lose in China, we weep on England's moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea, and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways we differ, in major we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. We wish you a great rest of the day, and I invite our facilitators to stay on as we debrief and check in with one another. And I wish you all well for the rest of the day. Thanks so much, everyone.
Some people are saying they can't enter their info, and I don't know why, because I changed it to be editable by anyone with access to the internet. You know what I mean? So it's just confusing. I don't know if there's anything else I can do about that. But I guess we could send a follow-up email and link it in there, and then people could add to it.
Yeah, I think that'll work just fine.
Oh, Olivia's saying people are trying to do the same cells at once. I bet that is what's happening.
So, Amara, thank you so much. That was like the most beautiful way to, that was like a great way to connect it all. Thank you for closing us out. I know that we still have some folks on, but I think our intention was to just provide some space to debrief and just see what all came up, and if we needed to help anybody process anything that happened in the small dialogue, since we weren't able to actually, you know, run around and see those. But I also want to invite all of us to maybe get up and take a moment to stretch, grab a bite to eat, take a restroom break. So maybe we can take like a 2-3 minute break at least, and do what you need to do. Yeah. And if you need a little bit longer, do what you need to do. All right, folks? Thanks.
Unfortunately, I do have another call, actually was at 2:30, but thank you all so much. This was such a fruitful opportunity to be able to facilitate, to just listen to what everyone had to say. I really appreciated it. So thank you all, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, Amara.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.